And so lesson number 1 is take care of your parents. Take care of your parents. So in verse 25, near the cross of Jesus stood his mother. By the way, what's his mother's name? Mary. His mother's sister, and then Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. So, by the way, there are 4 women at the foot of the cross, and how many of them are named Mary? 3. Now, in the first service, someone said it could be 4. And I was like, I don't think they would have named Mary's sister Mary too. But so I was looking up Mary, and Mary is the number 1 name that women have been called for thousands of years. And actually, the last 40 years, it's out of vogue, but they're saying it's going to come back big time again. At the time of Jesus, and many times in history, there have been times when 1/4 of the women have been called Mary. So if you go to cemeteries, old cemeteries, you'll see Mary, 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 and Anne is the other one I noticed. Lots of Annes. So anyway, they're at the foot of the cross. And verse 26, when Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, that's the Apostle John, he said to her, "Woman," and this is a term of endearment, by the way, "here is your son," and to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home. So I find this fascinating. Jesus is literally paying for our sins. He is suffering hell in our place. The infinite God, over those 6 hours, the infinite God is suffering for every one of our sins for eternity for each of us. And in the midst of his pain and suffering, he takes time out to make sure he cares for his mother. So, believers, take care of your parents. Honor your father and mother. In Timothy, it says, give proper recognition to those widows who are really in need. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should learn, first of all, to put their religion into practice by caring for their own family, and so repaying their parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to God. In today's society, now the kids are like, no, mom and dad, you pay us with inheritance. But back in those days, the kids and the grandchildren honored their parents and grandparents. And dear, I don't know about our 6 kids, how well they'll take care of us, but when are we going to tell our grandchildren that they have to take care of us too? So they have to repay us for their parents. So now here's something that I thought about. You know, Jesus had at least 6 other half brothers and sisters. They all had the same mother, but Jesus had a different father. Do I have to explain that, or can you figure that out? Okay. So they were his half brothers and sisters, and we know he at least had 6 of them, and we know that his family is in the upper room after his resurrection. So this is something very strange. Why does Jesus give the care of his mother to John as opposed to one of the other family members, one of the other kids? And here's the theories. The theory is that at first, Jesus' brothers and sisters did not believe that Jesus was the Messiah, and they caused trouble for him. But Mary was faithful to Jesus for the 3 years, and John was faithful for the 3 years of ministry, 3.5 years. And so Mary and John probably developed a believing closeness, And so Jesus was like, you know what? I think John, knowing what's going to happen, I think John is actually someone, Mary, mom, that will be able to take better care of you. Now, maybe it's true that Jesus' brothers and sisters, they were believers and there was a lot of persecution. So maybe Jesus knew a lot of them are going to die. One of his brothers was James, by the way, that wrote the book of James and became head of the church. I'm sure Mary's kids were still involved, but the major role, and tradition tells us that the Apostle John really does take care of Mary. And it is also interesting that of all the apostles, John lives the longest. He lives into his 90s. Mary, by the way, would have been 47 years old at the time of the cross, and if she had her last child at 40, which is when my wife had her last child, then it is possible that that Jesus' brothers and sisters many of them were still young and were not able to take care of Mary because they were still, a baby and a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. So, but here's the thought I had. Sometimes Jesus will call on us to take care of someone, to watch over someone that is not a blood relative. Someone special that the Lord lays on your heart. Maybe it's a neighbor. It's not that the neighbor next door to you doesn't have kids, but perhaps their kids live in Texas and California. Or they're busy with work, whatever, but the Lord has laid on your heart to care for your neighbors in Christian love. And you bless them. And I see even in this church, there are people in the church, I call it spiritual DNA, that people have been laid on your heart. Like I'm amazed how well this church takes care of the widows and the older folks in our church. How, the family's there, but often they're busy or live far away. But you have stepped up to the plate by visiting and blessing them and calling them and watching over them and taking them to their doctor's visits and all that stuff. And it's because Jesus has laid on your heart, here's someone I want you to watch and take care of.